That's what I like.
Eamon, how are you?
I'm all right, Paul. How are you?
I'm very well. Look, you know what I want to do today? I'd love to do today. One of the great loves of my life is athletics. I know we've done sport. We had Barry McGuigan on, but athletics is something that I always loved.
Love what? Watching it?
Everything. Yeah, mainly watching it. Because back in the day...
What did you do? What did you do on the track?
Well, it's funny you should say that because it's quite perfect for the guest that we will have joining us, is that the school that I went to in Romford in Essex had one hurdle. It was Redden Court School, and I'm going to out them now. Back in the 70s and early 80s, they had one, do you remember those like Canterburyan hurdles?
Yeah.
I think the school could only afford one. So the event that we had was the 100-meter hurdle, and everybody used to line up. You'd run along, jump over the hurdle, run back round again, and then it was like Horse of the Year show on grass. That's what we had. That's what made my love of athletics what it is today.
It wasn't the 100-meter hurdles.
No.
100-meter hurdle.
Hurdle. That's absolutely true. Yeah. And we had also had a javelin, and even to this day, and I remember they had little stringy bits around the javelin, and I remember that you hold the javelin between two fingers. That's one thing I remember, but I was always smaller than everybody else, and I looked about 5 years younger. So when I was in like the fifth year, when they were like 15, 16, I looked like I was still about 12. So I lost my will to compete, and it was unfair. Everybody had an advantage in puberty before I did.
Held the javelin between two fingers. I've never heard of that in my life.
Yeah. So you had the javelin between the and then I believe that's how I was taught.
Well, that's why you were going wrong, wasn't it?
Do you think so?
You see, at my school, at Malachy's College in Belfast, we had what was called the Big Field. And the Big Field is where we did all our athletics and things on. And when I look back at my life, I think I was very lucky, very blessed to not only see all of this on TV, but then to actually, practice it, get out there and do things.
Were you a good athlete?
Yes, I enjoy it very much. I was.
I just never believe you whenever you say anything.
No,
you were. I beg your pardon.
Very good runner. And as it turns out, do you know what my speciality was?
Everything?
400 meters. Right?
Hurdles.
Now, as you know, we're going to talk to Sally Gunnell today. Right? She is the mistress of the 400 meters, but it was a hurdle. She would spoil a good run by putting the hurdle in there. I reckon that's hard. Anytime you put a fence in front of me for anything, I didn't like 100 meters hurdles. I didn't like it at all. But that's good to do. My hips were never any good. I couldn't sort of stretch my legs really very well. But 400 meters, I think, is a really, really good distance. It just gets you. You don't
They call it the man killer. I believe that's the truth. I think that's what they used to call the 400-meter hurdles, the man killer or the woman killer. Unless women were better at it, but it was the man killer because not only is it the 400 meters, but also you could over the hurdles as well.
Well, it suited me. It was right for me. It did me okay.
Did you have a set of hurdles? Because you were at school before me.
No, we had everything.
Really?
And not only that, but we had a man called Mike Bull. Right. Mike Bull went to my school, and Mike Bull was a Commonwealth gold medal winner at the high jump, what's the pole vault, very thing, the pole vault, and something else or whatever it is. But anyway, so Mike went to our school, and we all had to adhere to his standard with everything. And the pole vault was the most vicious, horrible, ghastly. What's this torture? Awful.
Did you see? We didn't have all that. We had a high jump, but we never had the poles to do pole vault. I mean, we didn't have anything.
2 fingers. That's why you would have all been wrong for you, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's it. I was too busy being Brian Hooper. Yeah.
But listen, mate. I bet you like me. I used to remember athletics on a Friday night on BBC.
Palace.
For
Crystal Palace. Yeah.
Yeah, and you saw all the events, and then in my particular time, it was the Olympics, the Mexico Olympics, the Munich Olympics.
72,
Yeah, and what followed that? What followed Munich?
No, it was Montreal, 76. That's the first one I remember, was Montreal 76, which I don't think was a very successful one. But I do remember Roy of the Rovers comic had a pullout, and there was a picture of Alan Pascoe and Brendan Foster. And I think I'm the only person that had Alan Pascoe and Brendan Foster on my wall. But yeah, they were the stars of the day, weren't they? And he was a hurdler, Alan Pascoe, and then Brendan Foster, obviously long distance.
The point I'm making, Paul, is that I think for youngsters today, it is harder to latch on to your track and field heroes. Those days, they were there for us every Friday. They were there. And then there were other questions. What was that sporting program that everybody? Kevin Keegan was on a bicycle and Superstars. Yeah. So Superstars was what, 4 or 5 sporty celebs, and they went into competition against each other.
See, the thing is, you would never get that now because they used to get the top footballers, used to get all the best athletes, and everybody would go against each other. But nowadays, there's the insurance. You'd never get the insurance. And they used to have it at, it was in Barnet, I think they had it here. And then they would have the European. And that's the reason I always remember a ski jumper by the name of Carl Schnabel. And I would never... Carl Schnabel had a little moustache. I remember I think he was the ski jump winner from the 76 Innsbruck Winter Olympics. So I remember Carl Schnabel very well. But then Brian Jacks was very good, wasn't he? But then you remember Kevin Keegan falling off the bike, which is one of the great things that everybody remembers about Superstars. That was a fantastic show. Yeah. David Vine and the another late great Ron Pickering used to host that.
Well, I prefer remembering Kevin Keegan with, and I love it if we beat them.
Yeah. Years later. But do you remember? I'm going to throw another one at you.
Yeah.
And poor Sally is probably going to be waiting for us for ages for this. But there was a program it was like a kids' version of an athletics program that was on during the week called We Are the Champions. Do you remember that? And they used to have these kids, and it used to drive me crazy because the kids, they would go, here we are at so-and-so school. And they'd always do this thumbs up thing. It used to really get on my nerves. They would all do the thumbs up. I don't know why, but it used to really grind my gears.
But imagine doing that. Imagine living that and not having to, do a real job. That's what I'm trying to say. And being an athlete instead. Let's be Sally Gunnell. Let's do that. Let's bring Sally Gunnell on.
Let me do a proper intro for the start.
Okay.
Our greatest, if not greatest, female athlete of all time. 1992 and 1993. Gold medalist in 1992 and the 1993 world champion, and broke the record at the same time at the man killer. And she just went through the hurdles so easy, and still one of our greatest, the legendary Sally Gunnell. How are you?
Thank you. Gosh, you're taking me down memory lane there. We are the champions.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Did it go on your nerves of the thumbs up thing?
Exactly. I wanted to be on it. That was all. All I wanted to do was be on there.
But then when you had a chance to be on there, Sally, and you go in the zone, as athletes, you're there in the track, you're the starting lineup, and you're all thinking, you're shaking your limbs and you're getting ready. Do you, or are you able to exclude the extraneous noise around you, or is it always there?
I think it's one of those things when you first go to like your first race or the Crystal Palace on a Friday night.
Yeah.
You know, when you're young and you're coming up, you hear every noise, you hear everybody shouting your name, and it's petrifying. But then when you're in the zone, you're in that Olympic final, you're in the World Champs final, I don't know, they call it, don't they? This zone thing that you zone out and you don't remember anything. And I couldn't hear a thing. I was in my own little world. And I think you have to go there. I think you've got to. I mean, they talk about it, don't they, in football around, being in your little purple spot where every time the goal the ball just goes in the goal. It doesn't happen for very long, but you just have this little window, don't you? And
Sally, what can you hear though? When you let's say when you're running and it's in a huge Olympic final, what can you are you aware? Can you just hear footsteps? Can you hear crowd? Is your brain singing songs to yourself? Is it counting the right amount of steps before the next hurdle? What would you hear and what would be going?
You just hear your own voice because something like the man killer, the 400 hurdles. It's so technical. So
Yeah.
You just have to go, right, which leg am I on next? And how does that feel? Do I need to change down? Is it a little bit windy? You have to make all these decisions while you're running around. So you just have to sort of adjust it in your head. So you can only ever hear your voice. That is it. But you can't go, at one point I used to go, oh God, she's gone off so hard. She looks really good over there. You can't go like that. You just have to do your own little bit and go, okay, this feels good. And, this was nice and easy and relax, hit it hard here. You just have to have all of those things that you just rehearsed for ages. And then
you can rehearse and you can do all those things, Sally. But then I'm going to give you one word. And I always had difficulty with this word, stitch. Stitch. Yeah. How on earth? There's nothing as bad as a bad stitch. And how do you deal with a stitch? Do you run through a stitch? How do you cope with a stitch?
Well, they're very painful, as you know, aren't they? And I don't think I had one in a major final.
I don't think you did.
But training, yes. And as much as you want to double over, no, you have to just keep going. Do you know the worst thing is, what's worse than a stitch is if you muck up the last, 2 or 3 hurdles and you've stuttered into it, and then you've got this thing in front of you, your legs have gone dead. Somehow you've got to climb this thing, which is a mountain. That hurts, and that's probably the worst thing about the 400 hurdles. If you get it wrong, it really, really hurts.
Sally, you were ill though. I remember when you broke that world record. I think I remember you telling me this quite a long time ago that you in the World Championships. You weren't going to run that day. Is that right?
I know. I wasn't very well. I know. I was in a great shape, and then about 5 days before, I was like, oh, hang on a minute, got a sore throat, got a bit of a headache, and I was always one of these athletes who had to tick all the boxes, and then all of a sudden, you have that excuse that comes in, and you sort of go, well, I'm an Olympic champion, and I might get beat because I've got a bit of a cold. So I nearly didn't run because I just thought I had too much to lose. But then I go, do you know what? You can't quit like that, can't you? You've got to get out there. So I decided to run and see what happened. Try not to let everybody know I was coughing. I was coughing behind a tree. I didn't want any of my rivals to know. And then I went out and won it and broke the world record. And I was a bit like, how the bloody hell did I do that? Honestly, I was in shock.
But do you think though, Sally, that if you weren't ill, that maybe it wouldn't have happened? That maybe that contributed to the fact that you ran so well that day?
Maybe I was more relaxed. I was going in as favourite, so maybe I was a bit like, well, I can't expect too much. You're probably right. But yeah, it was quite an amazing race. It's probably my favourite race, actually, more than the Olympics. My favourite race, just because
great to hear.
All the odds against you, almost.
Sally, the reason we're talking to you is because we like you, and
it is,
and it's a joy talking to someone who you like, and then hearing from that person how they like what they were doing. Because if you do something you like, you never work a day in your life, and however hard and whatever the stitches were or anything else, you were still doing. It beats working for a living for you, and that was great. But what do you like? Share with us the things that you like.
The things I like. Well, I thought it was quite interesting when you were talking about programs and things like that, and from my youth. And I was actually thinking the thing that I wanted to go on more than anything was the generation game.
Was it really?
There was nothing sporty about it, was it? But it was just like, I just so wanted to just go down that memory game and remember all of those things.
Cuddly toy.
We are the champions. It's a knockout. I just wanted to do the generation game. That's all.
Coffee perk. Have you seen? I don't know whether Eamon, you have you seen it as well? And they've shown behind the scenes. I remember. I think they did it on Nationwide or something like that years ago. And you imagine they'd sit. Well, the screen would open, wouldn't it? And then they'd sit and they'd watch them. But there's a fella. he's in his brown overalls, would be placing the thing, while on the other side there was a guy that was doing the wheel to try and make so it all looks so glamorous from there. But he's going like, there we are. They put the coffee percolator in there, and then the other person would lift it off the other end.
That's brilliant.
But Sally, how did you take to the whole showbiz thing as well? Because when you come in the public eye, you're not just an athlete, you're a celebrity, you're a personality as well. Did you take to that easily?
Oh, no, not at all. Do you know, going back, you were talking also about school sports days. I had no lack of, I was lack of confidence. I just didn't believe in my own ability. So at school sports day, I would only run as fast as I had to because I didn't want to absolutely do my normal pace.
Really?
Because I felt like I was showing off.
Oh, bless you.
So I would actually just run just so I was just ahead.
Yeah.
I wouldn't show off.
I was a bit like that too.
That's why I lost, because I just saying, let everybody go ahead. It was just nicer than obviously both of you is the reason.
Yeah.
So,
do you ever remember? I can remember running. I mean, I did 100 meters as well, or 100 yards. It was in my day, actually. But you run and I hope the two of you understand what I'm going to say here, but you sort of run like, you know, in cartoons, the way they run and their legs go round like in circles, that you feel that your legs are actually going faster than your body wants them to, and it's like you're out of control. You've started your legs, they're off and running, you can't really stop them. Do you ever get that feeling?
Well, do you know, it's like, because we used to train on like a lovely little, you know, tartan track, nice and smooth. And then you used to go to your school playing field, didn't you, for the different sports or whatever. And it was up and down like this, wasn't it? And you're like, you're going up and you're just like, you're all over the place. I really remember that and just thinking, bloody hell, why can't we go to a track or whatever else? But yeah, and I just think, I don't know. You were talking about the pole vault. I remember having a go at the pole vault because girls shouldn't do pole vault back there. And my coach up at Crystal Palace, Bruce Longdon, they used to train daily. And he used to put this lovely bit of like elastic with a bit of foam on so it wouldn't hurt us. And he used to hold the pole and we would just run down and then he'd like push you up. Over the top of this pole vault, and I used to think it was brilliant, and I wouldn't be surprised if pole vault was back then and women were doing it. I probably would have done it there because I love gymnastics and I just love that. So, how
do you find your event then, Sally? I mean, how do you find that it's 400, because it was 400 first, wasn't it, and then hurdles came after that?
Well, no, I started as a long jumper, then heptathlon, and then the 100 hurdles, and then 400. But I always say, everybody starts as a sprinter because it doesn't hurt. Yeah. And it's like, we all want to be the fastest. And then you realize you're not quite fast enough. So you keep moving up. And then I sort of got to the 100-meter hurdles, which was okay. It's quite nice. Wasn't really very painful. And then I remember winning a Commonwealth Games. I had the biggest grin on my face. You know, I'd won the Commonwealth Games, best in Britain, best in the Commonwealth. And I remember Bruce going to me, you know, he said, it's all right, well done. He said, but you're never going to be the best in the world. He said, you need to go and do 400 hurdles. And I was like, no way. That bloody hurts.
The man killer. I was doing it, man.
Once around. And I always remember someone saying to me that if you never choose the 400 hurdles. You only do the 400 hurdles chooses you because you're no good at any other event. And it's the one that, you know, you can go the furthest in. And I think it's true. It is. It's horrible. If it goes wrong, it's really painful. Someone compared it to running a marathon. I've run one marathon. Yeah. Not far off. If you get it wrong, pain is not far off. I suppose a marathon's a little bit longer at the end. The pain goes on, but yeah, it's horrible.
Sally, all talking about horrible and being horrible and going back to your school days, I've read numerous reports that says that a lot of girls don't participate in athletics because of their makeup. They don't like losing their makeup. They don't like getting sweaty. They don't like their hair not looking well for after school and whatever. Do you think that is an issue?
Yeah, I do. And I think a lot of it is because of social media and selfies, and somebody might take a picture of you because you're sweating and your mascara might have run. And I find that really, really quite sad because, and it is one of the reasons why girls won't do a lot of that sport now. And they much prefer, they are introducing them to going to the gym and doing weights and things like that because you don't sweat. But, that's part and parcel of it, isn't it? And I think if you don't get introduced to sport and what you can physically do and your talent and your moment at an early age, you're never going to do it. And just because someone might take a selfie of you, I do always remember. So before an Olympics or a World, we used to take us ladies 2 hours to get ready. And honestly, you'd have
That sounds like Eamon on the show in the morning.
plait your hair, do your nails, full makeup. And I remember in Barcelona, full makeup on. By the time I'd got, warmed up, I looked a complete mess. It was like 90 degrees in that stadium and it was all over the place. Do you know what? That's fine. I had better things to do.
But look at the women today. I mean, they are glamour models going out on that track, what they wear and the way they look.
Jamaican sprinters with the fingernails.
Yeah.
But that's it. It's all about celebrity now. But with you, Sally, though, were you, because I always say this, and I've said it to Eamon, I say it to everybody, I've got so much respect for track and field athletes more than any other sports because of the off season and the amount of work that goes in. It's not the huge money that other sports are making, especially when you were running, did you have to work as well? And at what point did it get to be the point where you can go, well, actually I can be a full-time athlete, or was it never the case?
Yeah, I mean, there is lottery money now, and which is brilliant. But back then, I literally worked in an accountant's in London 2 days a week, and they gave me time off to go to the Olympic Games or to go to a training camp. I only had to do 2 days, so they were really understanding. But do you know what it did? It gave me it took the pressure off. I knew that, it was a lifeline. I had £14,000. It paid to help support me. So it was a real big lifeline. And I do remember when I won, they were like, because nobody really understood where you went off to do in the office. And then you come back and it was like headlines and whatever else. And all of a sudden there was a photo shoot with me with a bowler hat, a briefcase, Burberry, an umbrella down Fleet Street or somewhere like
So were you working when you ran in the Olympics? You were still working?
I was still working for an accountant's, in London.
It's amazing.
And and it is, it's not right, and it should be lottery funded and support and things like that. And
But it's not that long ago since, our international rugby players were all like that. They all had a job in the bank and whatever, and then, turn up against, Ireland against Scotland on a Saturday.
Yeah. And do you know what it does? It makes you, it makes you hungry for it because no one's giving it to you, and I think it's a real balance with lottery funding, isn't it? Because, you've got to be hungry for it still. And I had to create my team and everything that worked and work it all out and write begging letters to local councils for grants. So, you really invested in yourself. I think that does make a difference as well. So,
Sally, sorry, I was just going to say, what else do you like? I mean, give us another thing that you like or have liked.
Do you know what? My favourite food, and I think this is a lovely story, is so I was brought up on the farm in Chigwell in Essex, not far from Romford Market.
In Buckhurst Hill now, yeah.
Yeah. And, we were definitely lunchtime. It was always meat, 2 veg, and that was it. And I just remember I wasn't a veg person and still not really, but I thought it. And then I met my husband when we were 18 on a junior trip to Australia. And he introduced me to pasta and things like that, and to Chinese takeaways and Japanese. Yeah. So my favourite food was, is and still is crispy duck and Chinese. And I can't believe this, but a week before I went out to Barcelona, we went out for Chinese, as you do. and the fortune cookie had in it, my fortune cookie was, "You are the chosen one." And that was it. I was like, right, I'm going off to win. And that pudding had this little like sack of like number sevens and Lucky Charms and bits and pieces that I put in my spike bag. And I put that in there. And two things happened. I remember the day that I retired, I lost my little lucky bag. It went missing.
Mm.
Don't know where it is, but that was gone. And
did
the
you
other
look
thing
for
that was
it?
funny is I always remember winning at the World Championships the following year, and the Sun paper did this whole piece, and they presented me with a crispy duck. And that was the photo of me with
Brilliant.
the crispy duck.
Amazing.
There's a couple of things you brought up there, which made me smile. So you're married, right? So the truth is, you are Mrs. Big.
I am.
Yes. And are you ever tempted to use the term Mrs. Hello, I'm Mrs. Big. I am.
Well, I could never be Gunnell Big, could you? Or Big Gunnell. How do you know? Big Gunnell Basil. I had to really think about this. Big Gunnell coming around the first bend or whatever. And so I couldn't do that. So I've sort of lived my life with two identities, and I quite like it. So on all my, just on the school run, with all the kids, I'm always Sally Big. But Sally Big when I want to be, and then, just might be booking a restaurant. I might just drop the Sally Gunnell in every now and again. So I quite like that. But my husband, so my first boyfriend was called Russell Small, which I always thought was quite funny. Up with Mr. Big.
Mr. Big.
And my husband is tiny. So he's certainly not Mr. Big as such from, what was that program with Mr. Big? Was it?
It was Sex in the City.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
wasn't
I
like
met
that.
Mr. Big.
So he's probably
I
tiny.
spent the night having a drink with Mr. Big at the National Television Awards.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, still there. 18 years old, and we're still together. I don't know how we've done that, but we still are. So.
He's a very, for those who know, he's a very successful coach, isn't he, John? And are you involved in that or not? Or because there's great athletes that he's coached over the years as well, isn't it?
You know what? You have to be. It's like our roles have reversed, and he is. Athletics takes over your whole life.
Yeah.
So he's away a lot, sitting on the side of mountains at altitude. So you have to understand. You got to be supportive. I do a lot of the sort of the mental side of it, the understanding bit, picking him up, supporting him. It's a massive roller coaster, and I've forgotten how much. And we're still on this roller coaster. So we've been it with me, and now we're still on this ups and downs. There's a lot of downs before you get the ups in the world of athletics. So
Sure, I can imagine.
Well,
yeah, but when you do get one up, it's worth everything. So it's hard.
But I was also fascinated to hear you say there that you were born on a farm. Your family are farmers. Were you never tempted? Was there never an expectation to work the land?
I think they would loved me to have done, but I had no interest whatsoever. The nearest I got to was feeding the baby calves with milk. That was my favorite job.
Yeah.
But if not, you'd find me climbing over the muck heap in my wellies, or climbing up the bales, or running up the fields. It was more that sort of thing. And I always remember, when I joined a club at 12, Essex Ladies, they were like, what's a club? Your whole life was around the farm. Your summer holidays, you never saw your friends. You never went on holiday. It was the farm. So
it is life. I was a farming reporter for 2 years, and I do love the smell of farms and all that sort of thing. But I wanted to ask, all this controversy and all this, the fact that the country so behind farmers, whether politicians are behind farmers or not is another thing. Do you feel pressurized by that? Do you feel that farmers are getting a good deal, or what do you make of the situation?
We've still got the family farm. My brother runs it. My middle brother runs it, and he's just had to change direction. You can't, we can't just survive on our own fields and land. He's had to come up with new ideas and, just renting out the buildings, being more of a contractor for others. And I see how hard they work and the pressure and the expectation and just the stress of it, and his son's just about to take over. But, saying that, my dad's still alive at 96 years old. And I think part of that is down to, the physical side of being a farmer and, and being that fit and active as well. But it's very different to how it used to be. It's very hard. It's very tough. And I think there does need to be more support out there. Yeah, definitely.
Sally, I've got a question for you. And this is related to what you were mentioning about being Mrs. Big there and at the school. Did you ever do, because I saw this recently with world record holders that have had to do this, did you ever go in the mum's race at school? I mean, they turn up, because I've been to them at our school when my kids were small. They turn up, they get their little shoe bags out. This is serious. There's no messing around with this.
It's interesting you say that, because people say, what's your most asked question? And that is my most asked question. Not what does it feel like to serve an egg.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
What happens at the Mother's Day? And I always remember we moved school. This was with I had all three boys there. And we moved school and someone came up to me and when you go, what do I wear? I remember that Lady Di picture with the long dress. Do I wear it?
Yeah.
Well, so I don't have to do it. I didn't know whether there was a parents' race, all of this. Anyway, someone said to me, you'll be really pleased there's no parents' race. I was like, oh, thank God for that.
No.
And then the next minute, they go, for the first time ever, we're going to have a parents' and toddler race. Right. And I'm standing there with a probably 2.5-year-old next to me.
In your Team GB tracksuit, of course.
Well, no, I'd gone for the flowy skirt and whatever else, honestly, so I didn't have to do it. So off came the shoes and they put me there. But I was lined up with all the dads. There's no mums, and this one dad dragged his child down the track. And he's still living off that story to this day.
No wonder.
I bet he was giving it the big one, wasn't he? There's always one. Yes, come on. Oh, knock it off.
Sally Gunnell.
I'm just looking at your record here. During the 2-year period between 92 and 94, you won every international event that was open to you. Olympic Games, World Championship, European Championship, Commonwealth Games, Goodwill Games, IAAF World Cup, European Cup goals. Goodness me. Breaking the British, European and world records there as well. You are the only female British athlete to have won all 4 majors. That's the Olympic, the World, the European and the Commonwealth titles there as well. And I could go on and on and on with that, but I just think it's important. I spent some time with Daley Thompson recently, and it was like he just walked around, and I kept thinking, people passing by, and I'm thinking, do you realize this guy may have been the greatest male athlete there's ever been? You just sort of wanted to shake people and tell them. And Daley is older and slighter and very quiet and all that sort of thing. But how, when you've got all those titles, all those accolades, it's just incredible. How do you live with that? Do you just forget that you won those?
I feel sometimes as though it's happened to somebody else. It is a bit weird. And I don't know. I think when you're a parent and your kids, I've got 3 boys and they're all really sporty and they're all, older, but you're just mum. And I think, and if I ever get to show that race or whatever else, it does feel like it's an out of body experience, as though it happened to somebody else almost, because the day you stop, you can't do any of that. You can hardly, your speed goes, you can hardly get over a hurdle, let alone stride pattern. And it just, you're 31 and the whole thing just stops and goes. But you do have to sometimes remind yourself. But it's a weird thing, really, because you don't change as a person. it's probably, same with Daly. You don't really change as a person.
Is that hard to deal with, though, Sally? Is it hard because of everything you strive for, especially, I imagine, after an Olympics, and I've heard that before, that after a really successful Olympics, athletes tend to have a dip, and it's like, well, it's 4 years away, it's all finished, and it really is, after Lord Mayor's showtime's a million.
You have to come back down. You have, any major championships, you're up, you're on a high. I've never taken drugs, but I'm sure it's the same sort of thing. Yeah. You're on cloud nine, you're floating around, like this. So you have to come back down. I think, I had great people around me, family and whatever. I had lots of friends outside of the sport. I think that really helped. But I think, do you know what always drove me? It wasn't so much, I love, come on, let's win these gold medals. But I think what drove me was actually seeing how good I could physically be. So, you win an Olympics and you go, oh, do you know what? I can run faster than that. And I made a mistake here and I could have done this. And that's what excited me. And I think that's why I kept going and kept pushing myself. Because I actually, just to see how physically good you could be. And whether that was a gold medal or not, at least you were challenging and just go, I love that sort of challenge of the whole piece almost.
But when you were saying about, you said never touch drugs, but there must have been when you were, because I know it was the first time since 74 that the world record, and we'd all seen these runners from the Eastern Bloc countries. I mean, for crying out loud, you could see the difference. So you must have known that you were competing not only against an athlete, but you were competing against a system and also people that were drug taking as well. So how did you deal with that? Did you almost say, I know what you're doing, or you'd have to? It's an advantage that they have.
It's going on around you. I was that sort of era, and you could just tell. I was around with the Eastern Bloc and all of those, and sort of the Russians and things like that. So you knew, but it was one of those things you can't. If you started going, well, she's on it, so I'm not going to win. You wouldn't win anything. You can't go there. You can't start pointing fingers. You can't accuse people because it's such a negative thing in your mind almost. I never wanted to know. I just blocked it out. I was like, don't tell me. I don't want to know. I'm just going to know I can do this. And I think there was a couple of things. I think another good reason to do the 400 hurdles is it's so technical.
Yes.
And there was ladies in those races that were faster and stronger than me because of that. Technically, they weren't better than me. And I always remember having this conversation with Jonathan Edwards in the triple jump, and he still holds the world record. And I think we did that in our era because they were such technical events, and that's why we're still, up there doing what we did really at that point. Really, so that helps. And it was a difficult time, but you can't stand there and let it get to you. But and we were tested all the time. And some of the stories, shall I go into some of the stories?
Yeah.
I always remember the one story that I used to always hear, and I try not to, but the women used to put condoms with other urine up inside of them. When they used to, and so when we went to go and have a urine test, we used to have somebody in front of us watching what we were doing. It had to be watched in the cubicle, standing there. And if somebody was, was dodgy or whatever, they'd put a condom up inside of them, and then they'd get
talk about technical event, blimey.
Exactly, and then they'd get something that'd pierce it, and then someone else's clean urine would come out. That's what we were dealing with back in those days.
Goodness.
Incredible. When you talk about the technicalities of things there, Sally, one of the things that might have been beyond you was television technicalities and being a broadcaster, which you didn't find a happy experience. I remember reading you saying, you weren't trained for television. Well, welcome to the club. Were you ever trained, Paul?
No, not at all.
There are people who are trained. There are people, and I mean, particularly they love the TV executives. They love their footballers, for instance, and they will train and they will spend a lot of money on a lot of their footballers to make them. There's just so much money available in football. But you felt you were just thrown in and left to sink or swim.
Do you know what? It's one of those things. But you look back now. I actually did 10 years with the BBC. If we're doing academic, so it wasn't like I did a year and then you got kicked out. And like everything, I started as a pundit, and then I had an incredible time of doing the interviews and interviewing Kelly Holmes, which I absolutely love. But you then have somebody else that comes in, and you're not the favour of. You've probably both been there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then if your face doesn't fit or whatever. So towards the latter part, it was, I think I'd had some great support all the way through. And then I had criticism after 10 years. And obviously your face didn't fit with whoever. And then I was like, I don't need to put up with that. I've left
Criticism from who, Sally? What within
it would have
or
been,
outside or what?
Yeah, it would have been like, I don't know, the sports producer who was in charge of, sport or whatever else. Somebody new had come in.
Always.
And I'd had, some incredible encouragement all the way through from some great people. They might have moved on. Somebody else comes in and you're not the flavour. And then I just remember the last 6 months, I wasn't enjoying it. I left John at home with 3 young kids. And I got to that point where I thought, I don't need to take this. So, and I went out. And I think a lot of the criticism was around, interviewing techniques, but it's very hard when you've got a line of 20 interviewers and you've got to get this mic and before they move on and they're out of breath and you can't say, can you just wait 10 minutes, please? So a lot of it was around that and stuff. And I think also I didn't need to take that. And athletics back there, like you were saying, was every weekend, cross country, or take you away from your family in the rain and whatever else. It wasn't like it was now when you're just doing the major championships. It was pretty tough. So I was like, no, I'd had the time. And I think everybody sort of, when I walked away, was a bit, they liked all the story and the controversial, but I still did 10 years of it and it was great.
Yeah. Well done, you. Gary Lineker did what 17 years or so, with the BBC. What do you think about the situation that Gary found himself in? I mean, he was politicizing things as well. And do you think that as a presenter, you should be able to air your views or not?
Oh, it's difficult, isn't it? I think I know how easy you can make a mistake. Do you know what I mean? And it's not meant to be how you wanted it to sound. And, it's the world we're in, and I have to sort of double check. And sometimes it stops you from going, oh, should I really do that or whatever? Because and who you are really is. And I just think it's, it was sad for him to go in that because he was brilliant at what he did. But, I think as somebody in the public eye now, we do have to watch what we say and we do have to double check. And that's sort of, where I'm going. And it does stop me sometimes from doing things or posting things, or if I'm not sure and stuff like that. And because I'm scared about how it is going to be misinterpreted or somebody else sees it and I'm like, I didn't mean it like that. It's really tough. It is tough.
I want to ask you about from Sally Farmer's daughter to Sandra Farmer Patrick. Now, you weren't best pals, were you? This is your rival. She was really your rival, wasn't she? Yeah, your nemesis. But you came out better. Tell us about her and about that rivalry between the two of you.
We were so different characters. She was like what I always call the perfect specimen of an athlete, 6 foot tall, legs up here to get over those hurdles. And I was always little old tiny, like, she had all the long nails. She used to wear tutus. She had, triple makeup on compared to me. And there was little old farmer's daughter over here. So I think we were so different characters. And I was never going to be like that, and that was fine. And I think for years I lacked that sort of confidence, and I was sort of not in awe of her, but I was like always looking at what she did, and then you can't win gold medals like that. So sorted that out, make sure I got it in the right place, in my head. But she would always beat me up to like the Olympics in Barcelona, and then I'd beat her in the majors. So she would absolutely, it was to the point where we didn't actually really talk at all. So you wouldn't talk in the call room beforehand. You know, you win something like the Olympics, you're put in a room with, you know, with her and the other girl that got a bronze medal. And you don't even have a conversation. There's no well done. There's nothing whatsoever. So massive rivalry. But I always say, you know, that fueled me. You know, it was the reason why I train on Christmas Day. You know, it was
it just quiet though, Sally? Was there any words between the two of you? Because I imagine her giving it a bit of lip, if you don't mind me saying. So I can imagine.
Yeah, we did have a little. So in the Worlds before Barcelona, between us, I flung my arm, she flung her arm. And I remember afterwards I don't know where we were, I don't know, the restaurant or somewhere. And she came up to me and she said, "You stopped me from winning that race today." And I was like, I don't think I did. And I just remember her really giving it a bit of that. So that's where it's sort of that rivalry sort of really kicked off. And if you look back at, you know, I had to go back and analyse it. And it was a bit of both of us, you know. I think it was more her than me. But anyway.
Of course it was.
That's where it started. But that, you know, and that went on right through our whole career. So, yeah.
Sally, when the competition like that, when it goes, when it's no longer there, when the cheering goes, when the adrenaline goes, how do you replace that in your day-to-day life?
I don't think you can. And I think that is part of it. You can't ever expect to get a high like that again. And I don't think you ever should. And it was interesting, actually, because when I called my retirement, I didn't tell anybody in my team, not even my husband, because I didn't want them to change my mind. And I'd had enough of pressure and expectation. And you know, for probably 3 years, I didn't do anything competitive. I couldn't even play cards, couldn't even play pool.
Wow.
I couldn't do any. I hated that pressure that I'd had throughout that last few years. That really got to me, and I had to walk away. And that was part of walking away, I think, as well. But I do remember the first time it came back, because there's always something. There's a competitor in there somewhere. We had one of those assault courses in the garden for one of the kids' birthdays, and there was a dad next to me that I knew really well, Richie, and he went off, and all of a sudden it came out. There was this competitive side.
Wow.
Came off the assault course, bruises, burns. So that was good. And yeah, I think it's, I know I'll never have those highs, and I never expected it. And that was fine. I didn't have to go around trying to find it. And I think personally, having kids helped that, because you can't be selfish with kids. You know, you've got to look after something else. And I think as a sports person, you're very selfish. And
see, that will to win, that's the one thing I've noticed about anybody that's made it in sport. I never had that. I'd be always like, it doesn't matter. It's not. It never goes, though, does it? I still know about a footballer we know really well, Clive Allen. I always say about him that he came back from playing in a family table tennis tournament, and he was going, I won the tournament. I can't believe I won it. And he beat his 10-year-old niece in the final, and he was so proud about it. But he has to win. I had an uncle like that. I've never had that. Is it still there, though?
Yeah, it still is. Oh, gosh. Yeah. Now it's definitely come back. And even if, always. And sometimes, but it's interesting, because sometimes if I think I might not do very well, then I'd rather not put myself on the line. It's quite interesting.
Are you like that, Eamon? Have you got the will to it? You're a bit like that, aren't you?
I'd be competitive. I'm still not talking to you after that Europa League final.
Spurs Manchester United. It was when you said about Sandra Farmer-Patrick not congratulating you, and I was looking over at Eamon, and I'm still waiting.
Which is a true story, Sally. A true story. Sally, it's been an absolute delight for us, because we like you so much, and it's been great to hear about what you like as well, and just sharing the life that you have led so successfully. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I hope you enjoyed it too.
No, it was lovely, actually. Lovely to reminisce a little bit as well. So thank you so much.
We'll send you the VHS of We Are the Champions, and you can have a look at that. And then, and we'll see if we can get you on the Generation Game if it ever comes back.
Bring it back.
Thanks, Sally.
See you later. Bye.
Well, that got us over the finish line, didn't it?
You know what? She's really down to earth, and it's difficult, isn't it? When you think, like you said, how incredibly successful and all the gold medals she's got, and you would never, if you didn't know who she was, you would never in a million years think it, would you?
But there is a personality in there. There's the whole competitive thing that you mentioned there. And no matter what she did in life, whether she was a farmer, whether she's an athlete, that's got to come through. And it's fascinating because she's judged by so many people. I mean, she can't have kids who are not sporty or kids that, don't live up to things because it reflects on her. And I think she handles it very, very, very well. And it's great for you and me, sports that we watched and indulged in and loved. And she epitomized all of that. And it's fascinating just finding out about the life that was behind it all.
It was the Olympics. I wanted to, so many things we could have asked her. But did you have a favourite Olympics? Because obviously Barcelona was the one that she won. What was your favourite?
Well, I remember 68 quite well, but 72 was very prominent. But 72 was such a sad, disastrous time because of the Munich killings and things that went on there. But when you were young, the difference was, I suppose, Paul, always you went to the petrol station and you got free things. You got medals and coins and all sorts of little statuettes and little books about it and everything. And it was so very, very educational. And that's what used to happen in the shops and in the petrol stations in those days. And it was all worth collecting. It was lovely. It was such an event. And I feel sorry for kids today because everything is digital. Everything's digital for them. But yet we had the choice whether to lift and use something and keep it. And I wish I had have kept a lot more.
What do you think of this? Now this, it's not a real one. And for those that are listening, it's like a GB, it's an Adidas GB shirt with Great Britain on it.
Right.
398. And do you know whose number that was?
No.
That was your friend, Daley Thompson.
Was it?
Souvenir T-shirt they did at London 2012, and I kept hold of it, and I thought, because I used to love the kit that they wore, and I always wanted to buy that, but you could never get it, and that was the old simple one, wasn't it? It was the red, the white, and the blue stripes, across the middle, and now it's all of everything. But there it is.
There it is, and there we are. And thank you very much indeed for listening and watching. Once again, we do hope you enjoyed it, and we'll be back again with somebody else. I know why we're going to have them, because we like them.
Because we like them. So Instagram, on iTunes, on Spotify, we're on YouTube.
You get your podcasts.
Wherever you get them, and if you enjoyed this one, check out our other ones. Thanks, Damon. Have a lovely time.
Bye.
That's what I like.